before I do, Gene, I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about going to work for Porsche. I mean, you know, you were an original charter member of the PCA, you know, part of the Chicago-Milwaukee region, but then you went to work for the factory, didn't you?
And that was a 60 parade NASCAR. Rather, who was Porsche's brother-in-law at the time. And I got to know these people very well. Like a lot of people who would correspond with the factory, we got to know them. They would correspond back with our R&D.
Okay.
Really, they were extremely anxious to find out how these cars were going. Because they didn't build them, they assembled parts, they were wondering themselves how it turned out. That's true. So when something would happen, you'd write, they would respond. So by that time, I knew Rather very well. It was 1960. And they just made a special car. Remember, the whole club started because of problems with the cars. That's documented in
People got together to exchange knowledge and talk about how do I fix this?
out loud. He said, these things, we need help making them run.
Right.
So anyhow, with that as a background, the parade was winding down. It was a cocktail party. And Rather's a pretty gregarious, powerful guy. And he looked at me and he said, really wish we had a guy like you in the factory. I looked at Rather and said, when do I start? And, you know, just a second, we couldn't pay you near what you're making now. You'd have to start as an apprentice.
Really?
And I said, when do I start? And he said, well, I'll write you when I get back. Well, he never wrote. So I called him. 3 in the morning, and you get caught in the factory. You in America, they'll put you through.
Okay.
That was their market.
Okay.
So here's Rather, and Mr. Rather, were you serious? He said, were you? I said, yes. Okay, he said, I'll have him write you. And I got a letter, of course in German, about $190 a month.
And what were you making? at that
Quite a bit more. And I was a senior officer in life insurance company in Chicago. So it was 1960. So I went to the company and told them that I was going to ask for leave of absence. I said, I don't feel effective here right now. And, in this period, we need able to leave. And they came back with an offer too. They said, we will pay your way over and back for you and your family if you promise to come back.
Come back to us. Okay.
And that was the agreement. They also gave me letters of introduction to banks and insurance companies
Okay.
over there. Because the industry was going to go into variables. And I had nothing against variables, but I didn't think one company should handle both, a small company especially. That if you know Glass Steagall with the banks,
Yes, I do.
they should have done the same thing with the insurance company, they didn't. That was a strong feeling about it. So they said, well, go over there, maybe you'll change your mind. We'll make it easy for you to change your mind. So I told Porsche, I said, I gotta tell you this, disclose. He said, fine, we'll work together, because then when I was there, they had me shop dealers. And I could visit the banks and shop with dealers on the same trip. So, and I have all my notes.
Okay.
And they provided me with a background of every one of their dealers on the continent. And I had Porsche with Z plates, so I looked like a tourist coming in, and I'd observe what prominence they gave Porsche, to what
Okay.
extent they were giving good exchange rates, where the material was, how old it was.
And so then you're reporting back to the factory? Okay,
I wrote a report when I got back.
okay.
So my job was, ich war ein Arbeiter in ein neues Auto ausliefern. I was a new car delivery to English-speaking people, which includes GIs, Americans, tourists, Treffen, English,
Sure.
South African,
Sure.
anyone that spoke English, I delivered the cargo.
Okay. Okay.
And when I gave my notice I was gonna come back, Rather came to me and said, Mr. Porsche, Dr. Porsche wants to see you. So we had to go across the street to work one. And he was very nice, it was very Porsche.
Mhm.
And he said, we've been observing you, and what have you seen that you could recommend as improvement? I said, I'm dazzled. I had a couple of minor things on new car delivery. That they used to have the blue board, the accessories on the basement, delivery here, and then tea and coffee up here, and I want you to combine them. And little things like that. But I said nothing significant. Then came a shocker. He said, on what conditions will you stay here? I found out later that was a lifetime commitment. And I didn't know it at the time. I just answered the question. So I said, well, I have two ways I'll stay. But I gotta tell you, I have to go back. But nothing says I can't go back and return.
Mhm.
So, what are the two conditions? And I said, absolutely, if you do it, I'll stay. First was electrical car. I said, I don't want to be part, I don't want to be boss of a department. I want to work in the department. I used to be a radar man in the Navy. And I have ideas for electrical car, like your dad had with the engines and the motors in the hubs. He said, give me two. I said, well, one idea was that it seems to me that the braking system could energize the batteries. He said, we know that. He said, tell me something I never heard. I said, okay. I said, I could visualize in small cities where you'd have a sending station for electrical impulses, similar to radio or TV.
Mhm.
And then in the car, we'd have to develop a tube like you have in a radio that is a booster. And then we'd have some energy for short trips. And you could sell cars. He looked at me, he said, yeah, he said, we don't think about that one. But he said, can't do it because I believe that we're gonna have nuclear fuel. That was 1961.
Wow.
I've written them since then. I have the letter responding where I remind them that we are going electric for a while anyhow.
Mhm.
He said, what's the second one? And this is probably the most important. And I'll tell you before I start, I lost on both my missions. And I lost right here on this one. I said, I believe the best Porsche I owned was the 356, the first one, with the floorboards, wooden floorboards. When I drove that, it was the most direct contact I ever had in the world. And after that, they got better, more saleable, and in fact, I got a letter from Bill Schuller. He says, why don't you like the 55? A little bit later, he's complaining about his. But I have a strong feeling that car gave me more contact with the road than ever before. And I said, what I suggest is this. If you would start a division making 356s. And have a bifurcated line with your improved models over here, and make one do like Ford. I knew the new Ford.
Mhm.
I said, make it all black, no radio, no nothing. And keep it separate as an entry level for people, because I know it rides good. And I think it'll sell. And he said, well, I don't see any big advantage in it. I said, well, entry level, I know you're thinking style and bigger and better, but at entry level, you get more people involved. And secondly, I said, suppose after World War II, Ford had done that with the Model A. So he chased the V8, the big ones, he'd have kept making the Model A, which is really a T, with better wheels. And after World War II, if Ford could have sold that Model A for $500, we'd have never seen a Volkswagen or a Japanese car in this country. He looked at me and said, I can't do that either. Why not? Then I asked him why. He said, my engineers won't let me. I think it was more his financial people, but he said engineers. So I got shot down and went home. That was the end of my experience with delivering new cars.
And went back to the insurance industry.
Went back, yeah.
So thank you very much for that. That's fascinating. And now I want to sort of go back to 59, because 59 is when the lawsuit occurred.
Yes.
And so, and as a result of that, we had no Porsche dealer.
No Porsche dealers in the state of Wisconsin. Yeah. And at that very same time, we were trying to start a Porsche club.
Right.
And Jerry Tenenbaum and I were going on to Treffen, and from the dealer I worked for, Baumgartner Motors, we ordered our brand new Porsches for overseas
You could pick them up.
Treffen.
Sure.
But when we evacuated our cars, there's no dealer. There's no dealer in the whole state of Wisconsin. And we pursued anyhow with the encouragement of our friend Eric Claypool here. He said, hey, you know, this will all get settled eventually. We didn't know how long it was going to take to get settled, but he was correct that it finally did get resolved because, you know, Porsche was too large a company and stuff to just let the state of Wisconsin go
Sure.
the wayside. You know, eventually they'd have to service not only the customers that they had here already, but then future customers they would like to have that business too. So somehow or another, all the legal people got things squared away and they paid damages to the dealers that were canceled and all that kind of thing, just like currently the dealers that sued General Motors for being canceled,
Sure.
that we went through that, you know, that's the whole thing before. And so I was going to tell the story that we were, you know, just in the midst of getting this club
Organizing this
yeah,
thing.
and all of us would go to Chicago to meetings, and of course, we realized we had enough members of Chicago and Milwaukee that we could start our own. So Jerry had the connections with the Porsche Club, Bill Scholler and all that, and Kirschbaum and whatever, to get the documents. And then Bob Claypool came into the scene, and I can remember then we need to have a name for the club and all that sort of thing, the Steinlifters, whatever. And we were at, next to Baumgartner Motors, at Dorothy's Cafe, and he and I were on a placemat drawing up the logo.
Oh, really?
With the beer stein.
Yes, yes.
And we didn't want to plagiarize because the Milwaukee region also used the beer stein.
Right.
And we didn't want to plagiarize that, so we avoided, because I had some basic art training.
Well, you were
went to
into
the
the
art
art
center school, and I used to work as a commercial artist. I
Right.
knew that, you know, you could get in trouble by plagiarizing other people's work too. So Bob and I drew circles on a placemat at Dorothy's Cafe. We remember that. And then there was a print shop right by there, and we
Well, that's been an enduring logo.
yes, and
No doubt
it
about
was all
that.
kind of fun how things started.
Absolutely.
At a restaurant.
Yeah.